Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody and thanks for coming out. It's going to be an exciting council meeting, I can tell you that for sure. There's a lot of work we've been doing and it comes to a head tonight, so you've chosen a great night to come out. Thank you for doing so. The vision of the Village of Valemount is striving for a vibrant and balanced community, and it's our mission to serve the community and embrace opportunity. The first item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda itself, but there are a couple late items that I'd like to bring to the agenda. One is a letter from David Grant of the Funky Goat Eatery. And should we do these one at a time, or how do we add these to the agenda? Or just talk about the additions?
One at a time.
One at a time. Okay, so if I could have a motion to, or I'll move to put this letter on the agenda. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Bullock. Council, my apologies for this stuff coming late to the agenda. Sometimes it's the nature of the business that just comes up pretty quickly. So if you look on the date of the letter, it's a recent arrival, but we'll see if we can deal with it tonight. So that's one item. All in favor of putting that on? Thank you. The other item is a personal one. I got a tip from our MLA's office about a BC Small Business Open for Business Award. And I think we should apply for that. So I'd like to put that on the agenda. So I'll move to put that on the agenda as well. Councillor Blanchette. Any questions or all in favor? If none, great. Is there another piece? Is that it?
Two.
Is there a third
there's
item?
the application and the cover letter.
Okay, good.
Only two late items.
Great. Okay, excellent. There's two. So with those amended changes, motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Latimer, Councillor Blanchette, all in favor? Excellent, let's do it. Now we've got an agenda, we can go through it. First item is adopting the, approving the minutes from the regular council meeting of June 25th. Did anybody find anything grievous there, or, yeah?
Councillor Bullock was there. Nothing left off. Yes, I was.
Okay, excellent. Okay, any other items? Let's have a motion to approve the minutes so amended. Councillor Salt, Councillor Bullock, all in favor? Great. No delegations tonight, no unfinished business. Correspondence for action doesn't have anything, but we've got a reading file with a number of items in it. And one of the pieces there is a, I just have a question. When we threw those new agenda items on, would we put them under new business?
Yes.
Did we say we did that? That's what you wrote down?
Yes.
Excellent. Great. There is a great letter here from Justin Hook regarding the new garbage bins, and I think we'll get to that. We have the first and second reading, or we're planning on doing those tonight, of the garbage bylaw. So a discussion of that, I think of some of those points would be a good point to discuss that in that bylaw, which is only in its first and second reading, so really it's a good chance to discuss what's been brought forward. Does anybody have any comments on the reading file?
I just have a question regarding the letter from Dorothy Wakelin. I know we are addressing this. Has she been informed of that we are looking at making improvements?
I had a phone conversation with her prior to her sending the letter. We chatted for probably 3/4 of an hour. She's likely unaware that we've recently applied for a grant for improvements to the wheelchair ramp, or improvements to accessibility for the hall, and she was aware that we were looking at signage and more detail in our contract regarding the use of the ramp, but I don't know that she's aware of any follow-up actions.
Right, okay.
So it's a great time to do that. I just wanted to say with that one too, I felt like just calling right back, but then I thought, let's get council involved and not just run with that. I think it's a very serious matter. I found the letter to be a great one. It provided all sorts of action and really reasonable things. I think she tried to get into our shoes. And it's so neat to see that level of thinking. And it makes me think that she's in local government, or she's been exposed to it. Is that?
Somewhat.
Yeah. Anyways, great letter, but I mean, it all seemed very like doable things. It wasn't like put an elevator in or something like that. It was really grounded stuff. And I'll just say that in relation to that letter, I had a really good chat with Bob Beeson. The letter, just to characterize it briefly, was about an incident that happened at the community hall where a mobility device fell down the stairs backwards. And it was it really showed the weakness of the system that's there. By today's standard, it's not up to code. The landing is not big enough, but it's an item, it's something we pick up and we can't just remake the world every time. But I had a good chat with Mr. Beeson, who's 98 years old and who survived that tumbling down the stairs 10 feet, 12 feet. And he had similar suggestions. He suggested that a chain could be put there in one thing, and we had to talk about the fire safety things. Sorry, not to labor this too much, but I think it was really important. We almost lost the oldest and the newest members of our community. Mr. Beeson's other suggestion was having good signage and making people aware that that's not a good place to congregate. It seems to be a good place because it's outside in the fresh air, right out at the community hall. But if people aren't there, it just makes the access easier. And I think that was one of the mitigating factors there. So it was good. We've had some good discussions about this. And I've had good discussions with Public Works and the CAO as well regarding what we can do. So hopefully we'll see those things moved on. Has there been any signage put up yet?
No, we need to look at what signage we're allowed to put up.
Okay.
It's
Wow.
touchier than simply a sign.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for making that a priority. Any other items on the reading file? Councillor Salt?
I really wanted to thank the Robson Valley Support Society for their final report on the CBT funding that they received in 2012-2013 year. It was a really thorough report and really interesting statistic to see at how well the program was received in Valemount and McBride. And so I really thought that was a great report and thank them very much for that.
Yeah.
And then I also wanted to comment about us receiving funding to hold a community forum here with First Nations to help build our relations. So that's an exciting event coming up for us.
Absolutely. And kudos to the Economic Development Officer for his, it's kind of tough, they never announce when the funding is and you got to be close to the beginning of the queue. So anyways, he nailed it for us, we got it, thank goodness, and we'll be able to have that in October perhaps. Great. Okay, if that's all, let's accept the reading file. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Latimer, all in favor? Okay, excellent. We have tonight on page 35 to 38, an administrator's report on development variance permit 0311. There's a staff recommendation here, which I will read out. Or what is council's wish? Would you like to have staff go through this one, or you've been really neck deep in it? I'll give the 30,000 foot one, and we'll see if we need more than that. Actually, this is not going to make sense unless we have sort of. Could you just set up what the situation was briefly? Well, it's dangerous to do, but.
In 2011, Mr. DeHoon applied for a development variance permit that had two parts to it. One part was he wished to build an accessory building before a primary building, and the other part was he wished his accessory building to have an overheight roof. Council approved that variance with the condition that construction begin on his primary residence within 2 years. Mr. DeHoon contacted us this spring to let us know that he would be unable to do that, and we've been working with him since then to look at options. One option, he had originally requested an extension to his development variance permit, which wasn't an ideal option. We worked with him on perhaps developing a building schedule where he could demonstrate that he was working towards building a primary building. He submitted a very long building schedule, so staff was instructed to go back and work with Mr. DeHoon. And in working with Mr. DeHoon, he has proposed that he now turn his accessory building into his primary building. It's a lovely building. You would not recognize that it was an accessory building from the outside. And in working with our building inspector, he's been able to identify all of the components that would be required to turn that into his primary building. So
That's perfect.
Okay.
That's perfect.
There you go. Thank you.
I think that basically does it. I didn't want to speak because I didn't want to get us into trouble unnecessarily. The staff recommendation from this is that we approve a 1-year extension to the development variance permit with conditions of use. Am I getting this right?
Absolutely.
To be implemented if a building permit is not purchased by August 31st, 2013, i.e. the water will be shut off, right? Like there are some tools at our disposal to encourage compliance. That the sewer access installed for the prior planned primary residence, that be removed because basically there's essentially just a sewer outlet exposed. And that development variance permit 0311 be fully discharged upon start of construction to change the use of the structure from an accessory building to a primary residence. And what's in the, what we have in front of us is sort of a detailed plan to take that from a garage-like structure much more to home-like structure. I'm going to move these recommendations, and if we can get a seconder, we can get it onto the floor and have some discussion around this. Councillor Bullock? Council?
I think it's a great solution. I think this was something we talked about the first time it came to us.
That's to you guys.
So, I mean, it doesn't, it's the nicest looking garage I've ever seen. It only makes sense to go in that direction. And I like the fact that there's things that we can do to make sure it happens that way other than trying to follow a really long building schedule. So I applaud you guys for coming to that conclusion.
I, on the other hand, am actually not supportive of it, really. If we agree to this now, because we actually 2 meetings ago agreed to do an extension for 2 years with conditions, and then this came back again. So it's almost like the horse is being led by the cart here. It's almost like we're being manipulated to do what they want. I'm afraid that if we agree to this, we're setting a precedent, and that we're going to see more and more of these structures pop up. I don't think it's fair. I took a drive through the neighborhood. I personally don't think it's fair to the homeowner that's directly next to them, that's built an incredibly beautiful full log home, has probably spent in excess of $1 million, if not approaching $2 million. How is that fair to that property owner? So I personally am finding it hard to support this. That's my 2 bits.
Further comments on this piece?
In reading his proposed changes on his drawings, I mean, if he does everything that he wants to do, it's not gonna, I mean, right now you can see the 2-car garage.
Wow.
But he's gonna be taking down one of the garage doors and he's gonna be putting in a main garage door. So he's really gonna turn it from a garage into what's gonna look like a house. So I hope that our building inspector stays on top of Mr. Tahan and it turns out the same way the pictures show.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I have a question for staff about the precedent issue brought up by Councillor Salt. As I understand it, we are using this process to rationalize something that's been, is outside, right? Like it's something that sort of got away from us. Whereas we didn't have, we no longer have the tools to just pop down on this development variance permit, like it or not, there's a building there. So it's going to be next to, I mean, it would be impossible and futile and probably not desirable to have the building taken down or something like that. That's not within our realm of consideration. But does this in any way set us up in for the future where we would have to let somebody build a garage in advance of building a home?
No.
That still comes
Hence a
per item
variance.
to council. If somebody wishes a variance, they need to come and sort of argue that for us.
Each variance is considered on its own merit and individually.
My feeling, and I mean, I can't speak for the next council, but only for myself, is that I don't want to criticize, but I don't think I would entertain that. Seeing this is like somebody can say, well, I'm going to build it next, but I mean, if they lose the family fortune or they're not, even though they just don't feel like it, you can't compel somebody to build something. So I think just kind of, for me, this sort of shows, let's not go in this direction where we have to play catch up. But it doesn't create a precedent so much for it. Okay. Okay.
So as of August 31st, if he has not started to do his plans, then what happens?
For one, the water would be shut off. We could have the village remove that sewer access and charge him for it. We could use, there's a few tools we would have to implement the conditions of use.
Do we feel that he's going to
I do.
take a jump on this and get going? Okay.
I think the nice thing is, what I saw in the letter is that it's appeared that staff was willing to go part way, and then the owner seems to be willing to go part way. And I mean, I think those are some pretty heavy tools. Not being able to have water at your house is kind of like having a... Anyways, I applaud the effort as well. I think it's not the best solution, but it's retroactively, I think it seems to me one of the better meeting places. Is there further discussion, or should we call a vote? Okay. All in favor? Okay, fair enough. Would you like to be recorded against? Yeah. Okay, thank you. DVP 0313. The staff recommendation is that council approve the development variance permit 0313. And just briefly, this item on page 39, and I'll just catch up to it so I'm sure I know what I'm talking about. This is regarding a person seeking to build a double garage on a property that will exceed zoning regulations on our R1 zone lot. Due to the size of the garage and in order to accommodate the slope of the roof, the building's height will need to exceed the 3.5 meters allowed in the zoning bylaw. The Village of Valemount zoning bylaw 610/2007 section 6.3-8 sets the maximum height for an accessory building to be 3.5 meters. The proponent is seeking development variance permit to build a double garage at a height of 4.47 meters. This is the third reading. It's been to a...
Just to jump in.
Oh,
Sorry to interrupt. 2 weeks ago, it went to council for permission to consider the development variance permit, and council gave permission for consideration.
okay,
At which point, letters were sent to the surrounding neighbors,
okay,
advising them that this was going to be considered at this date by council.
okay.
Nothing was heard from any of the neighbors.
Your worship, it doesn't require 4 readings. It simply requires.
Oh, okay. Okay, excellent. All right. So the recommendation, oh, so it's something that we can approve tonight, if we so wish. I will start with well, I'll leave it to council. Does anybody want to put this recommendation on the floor?
Sure.
Councillor Bullock? Yeah, okay, Councillor Salt? Discussion? Okay.
I know the last time it came, Councillor Blanchette had just made the question about making sure that any of the additional structures that are currently there be gone. Like I noticed, I took a drive by there as well and saw that there's looks like a temporary, one of those temporary garage type shelters. So I'm hoping that that will come down, or that must come down when the garage is built.
Does staff have any recommendation? We can ask the proponent if we like.
It'll have to come down if she's gonna fit that garage in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the intention of the proponent?
Yes, the tent was set up to accommodate tools in case the development permit was approved.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Good. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, excellent. Okay, moving on to the Economic Development Officer Report, page 49. Excellent news there, of course, that we have C2C forum, among other things. Motion to receive the report. Who hasn't been up? Councillor Salt, Councillor Latimer. And any comments on that? Yeah.
Yeah, I just see that there's another opportunity here to forming a geothermal committee of council. And I see more and more we have committees of council being formed these days. And I think there are really great opportunities to include more members of the community in what our future vision or what our strategic planning is presently. Because I think that we really do need to diversify for our future success. And we are only 5 people up here. And so the more input that we can have from the residents here, the better. Because we are only 5 among 1,000. So if anybody feels like participating, they can be in touch with Silvio here at the office.
And I think the stage that this is at, I believe, is that he's going to get a sense of what that, we've asked the Economic Development Officer to get a sense of what that would look like, what would make sense, and just be able to give it wheels and set it apart from council so it can go and have its own little life and see if there's anything there.
Yeah, I talked to Silvio today about it, and I just said I would mention it here tonight to
Excellent.
just start to drum up excitement for people that are interested in the potential of geothermal power.
Cool. Excellent. Okay. Further comments on the... Good. Okay. All in favor? Great. Got an extensive public works report. It's very good. Very nice to see. I'll move acceptance of the report. Councillor Blanchette, all in favor of that? Okay. And if you just want to say something, just speak up. We got the building inspector's monthly report for the month of June 2013. Motion to receive. Councillor Latimer, Councillor Salt. And it's written there twice. Disregard that, I think. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, moving on to the financial report. That council accepts accounts payable report for the month of June 2013 for information purposes. I'll move that. And Councillor Salt? Great. And just a comment is that all of this is up in gruesome detail on the web. So every check that comes out of this, I believe it's down to every check that comes out of the village office, shows up on that monthly accounts payable. All in favor of receipt? Great. Financial officer progress report, page 61, 62. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Salt, all in favor of receipt? Excellent. Okay, bylaw 698, 2013. I will, this is the bylaw notice enforcement and dispute adjudication system, first and second readings, and I will allow Councillor Salt to set it up.
I'll try. Braden's here to back me up if I need him. What is bylaw adjudication? It's a legislation that's been designed to enable the creation of simple, cost-effective administrative systems for enforcing minor bylaw infractions ranging from parking tickets to dog licensing and minor zoning infractions. Previously, municipalities had the ability to use a municipal ticketing information bylaw, but had become problematic where a lot of time and money was spent by municipalities trying to enforce collection of infractions through the courts. So this new system had been introduced, and it's a means of simplifying the process, enabling it to be done more in-house, and reducing costs and time through the court systems. Where have we gone from this? We started this process back in spring of 2012, actually, where during our strategic planning for this council, we decided to look at this process and try and find out, okay, what do we need to do to go about implementing this? And in February of 2012, we then had a committee of the whole where we discussed and bounced ideas around and gave staff further direction to start the process. And then in March, we actually sent a letter to the ministry, where did it go, Braden, here? To the Attorney General to have the village listed on the list of communities that are utilizing the adjudication system. And that the Bylaw Policy Committee, which includes Councillor Blanchette and myself, start working on the bylaw, notice enforcement bylaw, in order to implement this system. And so we had sent that off, and the province has approved us to be included in the system. So our next steps are to actually work on this bylaw, which we're getting on the table now with first and second reading. It's going to involve hours upon hours upon hours of work, because it's taking any of the bylaws that we wish to really enforce through different fines and penalties. You actually have to go through each bylaw for each infraction listed on the schedule for this bylaw, list what the fine would be, if there's going to be a special agreement for early payment, or what will happen with the dispute process. So right now it's a lot to wrap your heads around. Councillor Blanchette and I and Deputy Corporate Officer Hutchins are really trying to get ourselves immersed, and by the time we get through all the bylaws, I think everybody will be sick about hearing about this system, but it's really going to be a way and means for the village and council to not only educate the public, but also to enforce our bylaws and to provide an adjudication process to actually either collect or handle disputes. And so yeah, it's going to be a lengthy process, but we're hoping by our next council meeting to bring it back for third reading with possibly one of our bylaws already listed on the schedule of fees.
Okay, and it's something that can be amended as progress is made?
As we continually add, it's the bylaw itself won't change, it'll just be the amendment, the Schedule A that'll always be changed when we add in any new bylaw.
Excellent.
So it'll handle things like you said, animal control, parking, good neighbor bylaw, water and sewer, developments. So it's really signs, yes, traffic. So it's going to be like I said, quite a process, but it's just to let the citizens know that we haven't forgotten about enforcing bylaws, and this is just going to give us an easier internal method to do it.
Thanks for your work on this.
Yeah.
And I understand that as you go through each bylaw, you'll not only just amend it so that it works with the adjudication, but you'll also take a look at it.
Yeah, so each of the bylaws will actually be reviewed. Like, we do have some, for example, the business licensing bylaw is very old and outdated, so while we will look at implementing it into this adjudication system, we will actually also be updating that business license bylaw as well, so it's going to be a lot of work.
Excellent.
It's a good reason to get a lot of things done at one time, though.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's great. Very cool. Okay. Well, I'll take that as a motion to, for first and second reading. And Councillor Latimer, I'll have you support that. And are we all in favor? Excellent. Excellent. Okay, moving along. At a snail's pace, but we're moving. The next item is on the other page. It's a bylaw 697, 2013, solid waste collection, first and second readings. Now we have this bylaw here, it's on pages 74 to 89. And because this is the first time that this hits the public, what I would beg council's indulgence to have the administrator walk us through a PowerPoint presentation on this piece, just to get us all grounded.
Have you all got the presentation on your iPads?
It's available on Dropbox
Oh,
here,
it's in Dropbox.
Oh,
Great. I need it.
and we'll have it displayed in the public gallery here as well.
I need to do it from here, council, because I can't speak very loudly when I'm sitting, so.
Oh, do we need one moment for the AV guy to get a mic closer? Okay, very good. I meant Gord Peters of Valemount Community Television. Apologies, AV guy.
So Braden, if you want to go to the next slide, overview slide. The purpose of this is to provide information to everyone. I know there's a lot of questions out there, perhaps a perception that things will change really drastically. Some things will change significantly, but most things will not change as much as are perhaps anticipated. But to provide that information, we'll cover the process that we'll go through for this, and the payoff should be a better understanding for both council and citizens, and better decision making with that information. So the village has a number of needs. One is to be recycle ready. We have legislation coming, we know that, and as well we have an option in this fall to elect to provide curbside recycling. We don't yet quite know what that will look like. The regional district has offered to do a presentation to council on that so that we will have a better understanding and understanding the costs of that. So stay tuned for that. But suffice it to say that recycling is in the future and we know that we need to do something. So we need to be recycle ready. We need reliable equipment that's cost effective. Right now our equipment is not reliable and repairs can be really costly on old equipment that needs significant pieces replaced. So that was one of a village requirement. Reduced emissions. Municipalities are going to be taxed on emissions in the future. And so this is probably a good time to talk about reducing garbage as a part of that emissions. When they did an assessment to provide a baseline for our community, they calculated all sorts of things such as the volume of garbage that was produced, the fuel purchases throughout our village, propane purchases throughout our village, vehicle types. That was all included in a baseline assessment of what Valemount emits in terms of carbon. And we have an opportunity to reduce that and reduce the taxation for our village. So one way we can do that is to reduce the amount of garbage. And this might give us should give us an opportunity to do that. Reduced injury risk. We know we have a real risk of injury in our current collection system. There are regularly overloaded bags that are far, far too heavy. There's bags that are overloaded that rip and spill noxious substances on our public works staff. We've got bags that have sharp and dangerous objects in them. And the manual hand bombing of all those bags creates a real risk for the village, as well as the repetitive motion of hand bombing in garbage bags all day. It will provide easier bylaw compliance for our citizens. The bins are much easier to move, so they'll be easy to get to the roadside for, especially for people who may have challenges around that. Crows and dogs can't get into these bins, so there's the opportunity to put them out when it works for you. And those are some of the primary non-compliance issues that we see. And finally, there's a real logical cost to fee allocation. We've tried to design our new system so that our fees that we charge to the citizens directly relate to what it would cost for that particular pickup. So it provides citizens an opportunity as well to reduce their fees somewhat in reducing the amount of garbage they produce. So for citizens, a village cart will be required. It's part of the package. It's part of how the calculation works on the fee structure. And as well, it provides consistency in volume. We won't have people purchasing various different size carts, and we can ensure that it's compatible with the truck. There's an annual size change option. So if you're, say, a household with a family of 6 and you sell your house to a single person, that single person can elect to reduce their, and my apologies, that is assuming that a family of 6 would use a larger can, but it would provide an opportunity to change that cart size annually for an administration fee. If a cart is not ordered, the household will default to the lowest cost option. So that's the small cart size, which is a 35 gallon. It's a pretty decent cart size still. But, it provides citizens an opportunity to control their fees through managing the amount of garbage they produce. And finally, all the bins are serial numbered, so you will know which cart is assigned to your particular household. So if your cart is missing and you believe that your neighbor has your cart, well, we can verify whether your neighbor has your cart or not. So, right next, residential. There's 2 size carts available, a 35 gallon and a 65 gallon. The 65 gallon is roughly the same amount that is currently allowed through the garbage bylaw. So we're not really reducing the amount of garbage that you're allowed, but you do now have the option to reduce your fee with a smaller size cart. We are proposing a schedule change at this point. As I mentioned earlier, it should be easier to meet your bylaw requirements. I covered the fee part. The crows and dogs, the time of day, heavy awkward cans, having it at the roadside, those should all be easier with the wheeled carts. For residential or commercial, we have 3 sizes available. We've got a 95 gallon can, which is a really giant one. You could really hide a body in it, which I don't recommend, but we've also got more schedules available and multiple cart options. For businesses that produce a very small amount of garbage, we also provide the small can option so that they can reduce their costs as well. And for businesses that are really large or produce a significant amount, there's also always the option to purchase a dumpster. We have some businesses in town that currently do that, and for those needs, that's what works. There's certain situations, we'll consider exceptions where the normal procedure won't work simply because we understand that we're aware of one large business where there simply isn't room for a dumpster, and we're going to have to work with them on allowing multiple large carts, more than I think we allow 4 in the bylaw. And so we can work with, on exceptions with those. The result of all of this was an analysis that we performed. I'm hopeful that by 2014, perhaps Public Works staff will have forgiven me, but I did ask them to do a lot of bag counting. We did a really good assessment of where the largest volumes of garbage were produced. And what we found was that the high volume producers were being subsidized by the low volume producers because our current bylaw doesn't really allow for those higher and lower volumes. It also doesn't speak to differences between, say, a restaurant that provides only takeout dishes, where there's a great deal of garbage produced, and a restaurant that doesn't. So it doesn't allow for reduction in fees based on those. Our new one should allow for that. I think we're good. So as a municipality, as always, we work to be revenue neutral. We don't make money on this. So what we do is we look at what it costs to produce our garbage. And we went 20 years out. We took a really long strategic look at this, and we looked at our tipping fees that we have right now. We looked at our capital costs. We've got a new garbage truck and the carts. And we looked at our operational costs, which are fuel, insurance, repairs and maintenance, wages, and a few other smaller items. We looked at building a reserve for a replacement truck so that the next time we're prepared to fund a good portion of a truck when we're ready to replace that. And we included inflation into our calculation. So once we had projected all of our costs, then we looked at our fees and how can we pay for those costs. And that's when we developed our calculation on our fee structure. As I mentioned, there's an annual option to change the size, and it's really important for everyone to recognize that your 2014 utility bills will be the first time that you will notice any fee. We bill utilities annually, and so we don't have the option to change that right now, nor would we want to. Everyone has paid for their utility bills, their garbage bills for 2013, and we're very happy to leave it at that. The connection between the volume and effort required and the fees is really important to stress here. So for the smallest carts, just as an example, for residents electing to use the smallest cart, you will reduce your current garbage fee by $16 a year. It works out to $1.73 per pickup. It's almost tough to go to the transfer station for that with gas at $1.46 a liter. So it's also much simpler for the village to adjust our fees. Right now, we need to look at a bylaw that lists every type of business, whether it's a restaurant based on seating, or whether it's it doesn't matter what the business type is. Every business type is listed individually, and we need to figure out what we would adjust those by if we were to change our fee structure. We also have no accommodation for, say, new businesses. We've got a microbrewery moving into town. How much garbage does a microbrewery generate? We don't know. The microbrewery doesn't even know. So we would have to take our best guess. We might be way off on that. Tying the amount of garbage produced to the fee is the most logical way to do that, and we can accommodate any business that way. And finally, it's easier to implement the recommendations resulting from the trial year. And I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but it's important to recognize that 2014 is a trial year. We're going to see what works, what doesn't, and in 2015 we'll make any adjustments that are required to that. So, I think I've talked about the municipality will be taxed on carbon emissions, so this is another reason why it's important that we as a municipality look into the future and identify ways that we can actively reduce the amount of garbage that we produce. There's a real looming problem for all levels of government in the maintenance and decommissioning of landfills. That's a big issue, and it costs a lot. And the best way to avoid that is to reduce the amount of garbage. As I said, there's recycling legislation coming. We're working with the regional district on what that might look like, how we might be able to approach that in partnership and manage it most effectively. And we definitely want the ability to meet citizen needs. We've heard a lot of citizens tell us that they want to see curbside recycling. We'd like to be able to meet that need if it's feasible. And yeah, I just want to stress again, nothing is certain until the bylaw is approved. There may be changes made. That's always a possibility until a bylaw has passed fourth and final reading. 2014 is a trial year, and this is still quite a process that we need to go through. The bylaw needs to be approved first of all. Then we need to order our carts, and that will give citizens an opportunity of a reasonable length of time to look at what size of cart they would like, and businesses to look at how many carts and what size of cart, and let us know what it is that they'd be looking at. Then we need to order those, and that they can take up to 2 months to arrive. So that's going to be a bit of a long process. Once they arrive, we need to enter them all into a database, so we have all those serial numbers documented, and we have them all, each serial number allocated to a particular household, so that we can actually track which one belongs to you. And then finally, we roll out this process. So we're not expecting it until expecting to use the new carts until mid to late fall. I know I'm excited about them, but we'll all have to just kind of be patient on that. And that's the extent of it.
Great. Thanks, Ann. It's easy to see the passion that's there for this one. I have some questions for sure. Yeah, okay, well, what's the fairest way? We'll start with Hollie.
First of all, thanks for doing all that work, because I know that was a lot of detail and stuff. I'm just confused about this fee. So right now, every year we pay $106 for our garbage. So is that going to change depending on if I use more or less?
Correct.
Okay, so if I'm recycle then my yearly fee will go down.
Correct.
Okay.
Your fee could be $90.
Okay, but then on Schedule B, it showed the $20 for the cart and the $45, and then there was $65. Sorry, just a second.
That's going with the 65.
Yeah, 65, if I, let's just say that David and I are getting the 65 gallon one. So we're paying $65 a year for our pickup. Okay, and then $45 for our tipping fee, and then $20 for our bin. Okay, well that's $130.
Correct.
But I'm only paying $106 right now.
Correct.
So how am I going to pay less if I'm using less garbage? I'm confused.
This isn't using less garbage. If you choose the 65-gallon can option, you are not reducing your garbage. You reduce your garbage if you choose the 35-gallon can option.
It's pretty rough. It's just the size. Like if you can fit all your garbage if a household can do their garbage in 35 gallons, you pay $90 a year. If you still continue to, probably what is equivalent now is.
So that 65 gallon is equivalent to 2 regular garbage cans? Okay.
Yeah. So the idea is this, it seems, I guess maybe it's best to ask it as a question. There is a financial incentive now to use less garbage. So if I'm a senior, right now I pay $106 and not producing very much garbage. But at least in this case, I could choose a 35-gallon can and pay a little bit less than what I'm paying now.
Can the seniors go in together on a can? I mean, you've got
Are
some,
you
like,
talking about
if you've got at the seniors' homes, the 10 units there, can they go in on a can? Can 2 or 3 of them?
The seniors' home is considered multifamily housing, and so they are treated as a commercial unit. So yes, absolutely, there can be one bin for the entire unit if they so choose.
Councillor Latimer?
Can I buy the cart?
No, that's not an option. It's part of the package for this. It's really difficult to keep track of who owns and who is leasing it.
And so when does the annual fee for the carts end, or does it ever?
It doesn't, because what's built into this is a reserve for replacement carts.
And how long do they last, and when would they need replacement?
It's really hard to tell. We've heard some differing numbers on that. So if our reserve were to the stage where we could replace the carts and they were still in good shape, we would definitely look at eliminating that, but that's not.
Is it based on a 5-year life cycle?
No, it's a longer life cycle than that. It's about 12 right now.
Okay.
And lastly, can I leave my cart at the curb permanently?
Not for purposes of things like snow removal and so on.
But they are on wheels and they are easy to move.
I
I
have
just want
a,
to make sure it's out there by 7.
Absolutely.
You know, so if I just left it there permanently,
it'd be there.
it'd be there. I just have to carry my bag out.
The idea is we hope that they're heavy enough and durable enough that you can leave them out the night before. Right? With the,
Right.
But the lids
locking.
don't lock, do they?
No, they don't lock.
So if they get knocked over, then the lid's open and the dog comes through and the crows get into it and garbage is everywhere.
How would they would get knocked over if you were to back into them or something, yeah.
Well, a heavy
bear.
dog, I'm just saying, like, if, like,
Or bear.
Yep, yep. They don't knock over easily, I'm just saying.
okay. But the lids themselves don't have a locking mechanism?
No, you can't have that and still be able to dump them into the truck.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Currently, we've got every garbage type holding, unit under the sun here. So this standardizes them. And
It's very
yeah.
successful in other communities that I've seen before. We were certainly not the first one to look at adopting this type of system. And go
I'd like
ahead.
to speak to the lease bit. My sense of a lease, I think, might be a bit skewed, but typically when you lease something, are you working towards ownership, or is that not necessarily the case?
Not necessarily, you can lease a house for 100 years if you like, and you don't own it.
So why have we broken out the cost of ownership of the cans separately and just said instead, we're going to provide the cans, here's your $90 fee, or whatever, $125 fee? What was the purpose of that?
Maybe it made it more confusing, but for us it made it more clear where exactly the costs were, where our costs were, and so where we would recoup those fees.
Right.
In our efforts to try to tie costs to fees, this is how it most easily broke down.
Okay.
Recognizing that one reason it's not an option to opt out of having a card is simply because this structure is what meets the village costs. If we allow opt-out options, then we simply have to raise the cost somewhere else. And it is likely to make it more unfair that those costs might be borne by those that are, larger costs would be borne by those that aren't producing the amount of garbage.
My thought is that if I live in my house for 50 years, I mean, how much does that bin really cost, and why can't I buy it?
Exactly.
You know?
But how many bins are you going to go through in 50 years? If the life cycle is only 10 to 12 and you're for 50, and those bins are $120 a piece, you've still spent $500 in bins.
But I don't think the village is in the business of owning bins. I mean, can we really afford to own the bins if people want to buy them?
Yeah, I think,
Let's just.
did we not, I just, on the question of supplier, when we as a council put out the bid for a garbage truck, did we not also include something on bins?
We did, absolutely. Can I speak to Councillor Latimer's point?
Sorry.
That was a really difficult decision. We worked, originally that was the plan. We wanted citizens to buy them. And we heard loud and clear from a number of citizens that the $100 up front would be too onerous. And we considered a number of different options of some kind of a repayment structure and so on. And finally, the lease one was the only one that made sense. It's always council's option to change that if you want to require citizens to pay, to purchase their bins, but it has to be all one or all another. We don't have the mechanism to handle both.
Wasn't there a discussion at some point that there was going to be a payment option if they couldn't afford to pay for it all at once? So then they would still own the can, but it would just be over a period of time?
Again, that got really, really difficult to manage once we tried to work that into a real scenario.
Would it not be treated the same as our taxes and stuff? I mean, you can make payment plans on your taxes, can you not, or?
It just worked out really, it was really complicated to.
I'll just speak to that if you don't mind, because I sat in on the committee for this piece. One of the things that administering a new service like this is it gets awfully unwieldy. And the thing that we wanted to shy away from was, this approach is definitely steamroller-ish. You know, it's this idea is that we need this totally new system and we need it to work and we just need to get it done some way. And the idea is around the individual loans to people. Say somebody comes halfway through, you know, like in year 3 or whatever, they're not high earners or whatever. We need to account for their garbage can, right? Like the staff time involved in that is like a soft time and it's hard to. So we really tried to rule out exceptions, really. And that's what this does. And the benefit is, although it might not be, people might much prefer to own their garbage bins, and I understand why. But it makes it more complex and administration heavy for us. And that's one thing we want to avoid. We're rolling out a whole new service. Everybody is going to need a bin. And we can get them all at a go. And in fact, it was a part of the RFP on the truck. So it's just, how do we get into this without creating a quagmire and having, like, say, an administrator working part-time on the garbage, how much you owe on your garbage bin for those people who didn't want to pony up for the $100. And the other piece is we can't afford to have cheap, whatever, we can't afford to have knockoff or unexact bins. They all have to be the same. They need to be the same quality, they need to be the same thing that picks them up. And the idea is if we own them, if we see a bin is not working anymore, we control that. And it is a little big brotherish, but the idea, this is a whole new world of hurt, and we have to have, that arm has to come out, it's got to pick up the can successfully and put it back down, and everybody needs, you know, so I apologize.
No, not at all. I just want to add one other point I've forgotten to mention is we benchmarked with a lot of other communities in rolling this out, and this is the way that other communities have found to manage this. They've also encountered the same difficulties that we have in trying to figure out how can people own this, and this is by far the most common way that this kind of a program is rolled out.
And again, administratively, those carts are serial number assigned to your home. My former community I was in, they rolled out a program like this. Yeah, we resisted it at first. We didn't like the idea, but we ended up absolutely loving those carts. They're so easy to maneuver. They're wonderful. It was built onto we were billed every 2 months there, and it was built into our utility building. And it was an ongoing thing, and it was also to help build reserves for replacement equipment. And isn't that one of the strategies this council said, is that we would be working on building up reserves for infrastructure and capital replacements?
I have one other, more of a comment than, I guess, is one of the one of the pieces, and I have no doubt that this is not gonna hit home too well. Some businesses, now that supposing this bylaw gets passed, it really is based on use. So you can imagine, actually, it's previously, restaurants, for example, were billed on the number of seats that they have in their restaurant. I don't want to use names, I'm not being coy or anything, but I don't want to call any particular business out or whatever. But some businesses produce a lot of garbage and don't have many seats. This idea of just calling a spade and saying, how much garbage do you produce and what do you do? It provides actually an incentive for businesses not, like there's a wide range that a business can pay from very, very little, as much as a resident, to a ton. I mean, up to a dumpster pickup a week or a dumpster pickup daily, quite expensive. But this sort of recognizes the difference, and I think that being more in tune, I think the question has sort of become ownership of garbage cans, but I think more largely than that is not only are you going to pay less, I think we're guessing like 75% of the town is going to pay a lot less. The remaining 25% of residents who don't produce a lot of garbage, and there's a lot of handling going on there. So for the 75% of town that is going to be paying less, consider that as just the garbage can ownership by the village as a convenient way of rolling that out and allowing us to get to the savings. Because ultimately, big producers who've been causing serious tipping fees and serious amounts of time, we have businesses that are, the garbage is removed every day. One dumpster full, and it's a straight out to the thing. Now, at least, we still give them a very, very good rate. There's no penalization. I bait any private entrepreneur to try to beat us at the cost that we do that at. But the result is we go from one that penalizes homeowners who don't generate a lot of garbage to one that rewards people who do. And if you're currently a big producer, there's an option for you to try to use less and then reap the benefit. So that's pretty cool. Now, that wasn't a question. So anyways, any other comments or concerns or any? Yeah.
To remember that, like you said, it's 2014 is a trial year, so we figure out where it's working and where it's not. You know. Yep.
I'm sure there'll be lots to learn. One more thing. Permit me. The other item is I might stand to be corrected. I really hope that we see a tremendous increase in the availability or in the amount of time, a reduction in the amount of time that we spend on garbage using the automated pickup. Things are standardized, they're right by the curb, and I'm sure there'll be lots of issues rolling this out in its first year, like finding a place on your curb if your hill's on a slope. There are lots of things we got to get around. It's not going to be perfect, but the idea is that when that garbage truck comes going down your thing, he's going to zip along. I've seen it done in other communities and it's quite quick. So that's good. We're making better use of our own workers' time too. And saving their backs. Yeah. Okay, so I think we've got it on the table. Have we got it on the table, the first and second reading yet? Not yet. I'll move first reading. Or first and second. Councillor Soul.
I do have an item that just needs some clarification or correction. Under item 8, collection charges 8.3, the way the bylaw is currently worded is it says a discount of 10%, and in brackets we have 8%.
I got it.
So which is it? And that's shall be allowed on the yearly rate if paid on or before March 10th of each year.
Would it be appropriate?
So,
Yeah.
just make sure that's corrected by our
Okay,
third
which way
reading.
would it be corrected? To 8 or 10?
To 8.
It would be to 8. Okay. Very good, thank you.
I also have one more clarification about, it says in there that you can change the size of your can once a year as per a fee. And I just wanted to clarify with Ann today what that fee would cost to change your garbage can, and it's $20 a year. Just so we have all the fees in front of us tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. It's on the table. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Okay. Okay, and any opposed? Maybe registered as opposed? Okay. Record Christine Latimer as opposed. Okay. I'll just get back to my thing here.